Welcome, everybody, to the Two Night Musicians podcast. In this podcast, we're talking about
how to get big in the local music scene.
roll the music. Okay, sweet. So it's been a week since we talked to you guys. Hasn't been a week since we talked, though.
It's been a solid 5 days.
Yeah.
The business week.
Yeah, it's been a business week. So in those 5 days, what are your top 3 heavy rotated songs that you would suggest to people?
I'll tell you what, Ryan. I had to negate your sleepiness. All right. Well, my first pick's got to be Artificial Selection by Dance Gavin Dance. They're one of my favorite bands for sure. In my opinion, they're one of those bands that every album's just been great. You can fight me about it on the comments.
Yeah, you guys can
fight me.
Meet him out back.
Yeah.
Probably around noon.
You'll probably win because I'm not very strong.
He just has strong fingers on guitar.
And I'm not going to win a fight with those. I'll win your girl with them. But no, Dance Gavin Dance, Artificial Selection. I don't know how I feel about some of the production on it. But I do really love the guitar writing. Will Swan's guitar playing is excellent. It's very, it's a good mix of shreddy and catchy. And then Tillian, as always, he just writes excellent vocal lines, very memorable. And then my next pick's got to be, I've been listening to a lot of Hippocampus in general. My girlfriend got me into them a little while ago, and I would describe them as pop rock. But I've heard them described as surf goth. Surf goth. Which, you know what? I could actually see it. Like I was pretty skeptical, but then I listened to it and I was like, damn, they're right. Like this is definitely surf goth.
Okay.
But they have really great grooves. They have a lot of really good syncopated rhythms. And then kind of like, I mean, I'm not like Dance Gavin Dance, but they also have really catchy, memorable vocals, which I think is really important for the commercial success of a band. I mean, that's just actually, that kind of just goes without saying, you know. Having really catchy, memorable vocal lines is just essential.
Yeah,
and they nail that for sure. And another band that nails that, which is actually my number 3, is State Champs. They're a really great pop punk band. They just came out with a new album this year called Living Proof. Okay. It's produced really, really well, just like everything after their first release is just produced excellently. I'm not necessarily a fan of every single song. This album's a little bit poppier. They've just kind of been getting progressively more and more popular, but I really do love this album. The ones that are great on there just make it one of the best releases to me. And yeah, so it's just a great all-around album. How about you, Ryan?
Nice. Yeah. So these last couple days, I mean, this song I've been listening to for a while, but there was a song on the radio called "I Want to Know" by NOTD.
What does that stand for?
National Octopus Team Destroyer. I don't know.
That's a pretty badass band name. Like, I really hope that's what it really is.
No, but so this song they came out with, it's a good song, but they had there was a remix, an acoustic version remix, which I think is so much better. Because the normal song just kind of, it's like in your face, like it's very like heavily produced. But the acoustic version just feels more genuine and what's the word? I had it. What was that word again?
Is that rock snob Ryan talking though, or is that objective Ryan talking?
No, this is objective Ryan.
No, I trust you. I'm just giving you a hard time.
It just feels more real. Feels more emotional, especially for what the lyrics are saying in the song about, like, basically like, is this the girl you've been cheating on me with? And is she really who you want to be with? Do you really choose her over me? Kind of thing. Yeah. Which is like super heavy subject matter, but like the acoustic version makes it feel like it's like, it almost makes it like a tearjerker. It's like, I'm sorry, Bay Miller.
Nice.
My second pick, this song called "We Should Be Together" by Pia Mia. That's actually really fun to say, Pia Mia.
Pia Mia.
Pia Mia, Pia Mia, Pia Mia. Okay, I'm gonna stop there.
Please. Please do.
Yeah, but so this song, I got it on the Spotify, the Discover Weekly, where they do like a.
That's great, by the way. You
okay,
get some great songs on that.
good.
Yeah.
That's like my favorite thing every week. And I have like a special playlist where I save all of my favorites from those.
Yeah.
But so this song had come on, and it was super jammy. It's like, dun, 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 we should be together.
That sounded kind of like Childish Gambino, right?
A little bit, yeah. No, it definitely has that vibe.
Which sounds like Cat Stevens. I don't know if you've heard that Cat Stevens songs that sound. Oh, dude, yeah. Don't even get me started. Yeah, go on.
Well, you're already getting me started. But okay. Yeah, but and then so my final song, or I guess it's an album. Logic just dropped a new album. It's YSIV. I don't know what that stands for, and I'm not going to try to guess.
YSIV.
Yeah.
Young International.
No, it's an.
Oh, YS?
Yeah.
You're stupid, ignorant. Oh man,
Ventura. I don't know.
Go ahead. Just
Vegan?
tell us your song, Ryan, please.
Okay, yeah. So
Stop me now.
So this new Logic album, it's the last in the Young Sinatra canon.
And those are the ones that take place in the future.
Yeah, well, it's like, so that future one, I think the space future stuff is going to be kind of going through all the albums, because I've listened to some of like the Bobby Tarantino ones, and it has some of those themes.
Spaceships and
stuff.
stuff.
It has some of those themes in it, so it feels like that's just going to be like an overarching theme story that goes through all of his albums. But I think the Young Sinatra is just about like the subject matter of those songs, and the kind of the feel and style of them is slightly different than some of his other stuff. So
Yeah.
that's kind of the end of those. But like other albums in that one would be like The Incredible True Story and Everybody, and then Under Pressure are the other three. Not in that order though.
Yeah.
But yeah, so it's a super good album, and he has a song where he's like, I think he's rapping like 400 words per minute. It's crazy.
Dang.
That's
pretty
fast.
fast. It's pretty fast.
It's really intense.
But yeah.
But if those were like actual words and not just blah blah.
Yeah. It's why you're not famous.
Yeah, that's why I'm not a
And
rapper.
which brings us to the next our next point here for those of us who aren't famous.
Our main point.
Yeah, actually,
Yeah.
yeah. For those of us who aren't famous, who aren't Logic, who are still branching out in their local music scene, which is an essential part of becoming an established artist.
Yeah, or even just looking to try to do that in general, like you haven't started at all and you're like, "Oh, I want to get into the music scene."
Yeah,
Like this is your podcast.
today.
Yeah.
Or in general,
Yeah.
I mean. But being big in your local music scene is great for a lot of reasons. So once you start branching out, and once people start coming to your shows and you have a local following, those can end up being some of your most important fans. Those are the people who are there since the beginning. Those are the people that, help you out early on, before you have people who have never seen you before but love your music, before you have fans that have found you over the internet, or found you or heard of you from a friend. These are the people who get you started.
Who buy you drinks.
Yeah, they're your friends. They're your family. They're friends you make in the music scene, and overall just being sociable.
Yeah, they help you get gigs.
They help you get gigs.
They're like your biggest supporters, biggest promoters, and it's super important to kind of get in with that. And a big part of this podcast too is it's like getting into the scene. There's like, I'm sure there's way more than this, but there's basically like two main forms of the scene. There's like the band scene, which Bret has way more experience with than I do. And then there's like the session musician, like I'm just a bass player kind of thing. Or
Which
I'm just
is
a
Ryan's
guitarist.
route. Yeah.
So it's like there's two pretty different ways to go. They both have a lot of similar things in them, but similar elements. But for the most part, they're very different.
Yeah.
Yeah. So we're going to kind of talk about both of those and give you guys some of our experiences and give you some advice from what we've learned and what we wish we did.
Yeah. So for my experience in being in different bands, my first band, well, yeah, I'd say my first real band that I was trying to get, big in the scene with original music, networking, all that fun stuff. My first band was called Bear Witness. I know, it's pretty great. It's my fault I came up with it.
Yeah.
I was 18 or 19, and we were out of Salem, Oregon, and we were playing kind of this prog rock kind of emo kind of thing, and I learned a lot in that experience. We played lots of just low pay, low fan turnout shows. There were shows at bars where there was, the only audience was the other bands. And I think if you talk to just about every other band out there, unless they had like a shoe-in somehow with some other, with other opportunities, most bands, that's how they start.
Yeah. And the hard part too is like, especially where you guys started, you guys were all like 18.
It was hard to play in bars.
Yeah, it's hard to play in bars, but it's also hard to get all your friends who would come to support you, because it's like most of those shows were like 21 up.
Yeah.
And so it's like I wanted to go to a couple, but it was like everyone that I could go to was like
at a bar.
Yeah.
My own friends couldn't come. It was awful.
Yeah.
But if I learned anything in that experience, and if I learned anything about getting shows, especially locally, is, how well you do is important. How well you play is important. You want your performance to be memorable. You want people to come to your shows because you're good. Mm-hmm. But as a live act, as a local act, a huge part of it, and this translates into being, promoting yourself online as well. A huge part of it is the relationships you make. Mm-hmm. You go to a show and you talk to the promoter. You thank them for having you there. You get to know them a little bit, and if you do well, they just might have another show for you. And that's just how Bear Witness was. We went from, promoter to promoter. We made friends, we made connections. And then, that band just kind of fizzled out, and we just kind of parted ways. And then more recently with my old band, Vita Occulta, that's exactly what that was. And from that experience, I learned that being personable, being social, mm-hmm. making friends, that's what's really, really important. You can be a decently okay band. You don't have to be the best. You should be.
Right. Yeah, you always want to put your best foot forward.
Exactly. But what really, really matters about getting big locally is talking to people, making friends, making connections. I was reading this really great article by a DIY musician, and it had this term in there that I'd never heard before. But it's called conversational generosity.
Whoa.
Yeah, and I think it's a really great term. When you're talking
mm-hmm.
to people, to people in the music scene, you don't want to just be like, "Oh, hey man, thanks for coming to my show. This is my band. Yeah, we're looking for shows. You're a promoter, right? You can hook us up with more shows." You want to talk to them, let things come organically. Talk to the people that come to your shows. Ask them how they liked it. Ask them what brought them out. Mm-hmm. Just be casual, be calm. Don't be pushy. And then let them talk. That's what conversational generosity is. And then if you show that you're genuinely interested in what they have to say, they'll be more genuinely interested in what you have to say. Mm-hmm. And that's when you talk a little bit about your band, and then they'll like you as a person, and they'll want to book you as a person, as opposed to just being a faceless band, an entity that makes music. They want a person they can relate to, talk to, and help out. Mm-hmm. And that's how it works with your friends coming to your shows. It's how it works with making friends in the music scene and getting them to come to your shows. And before long, if you stay sociable, you talk to everybody you can, you be friendly, and you play pretty well, that will help you with your turnouts drastically with local acts in general. Mm-hmm. You can't stress that enough, just being social and friendly. And if you're not a particularly sociable person, that is actually something you can practice and become more comfortable with. Mm-hmm. But definitely just conversational generosity, being friendly, being kind. People are going to like you as a human being, and they're going to book you to help you, even if they kind of like your music. But as locally, like when you're talking shows that aren't, huge shows, if they like you, they'll try to help you out usually. And then
Yeah.
in return, what ends up happening is you want to be able to sell them tickets, and that'll make you like them or make them like you more. But that's a whole other animal, is just selling tickets, getting a good show turnout, and that'll probably be in a different podcast.
Yeah, that could be a whole nother podcast by itself.
Yeah, and we can get into more ways to get into the scene. But what about you? What's your experience?
Yeah, so for me, probably the best thing I did for getting into the local scene, when we were in high school, it was 2013. A local community theater was doing this show called Legally Blonde, and at that point I was like, oh, I really want to play in a pit orchestra. That'd be super cool. And a bunch of my theater friends in high school were going to be in the show acting, and so I went up to a couple of them, like, hey, do you guys know if they're going to have like a live band or something? And they're like, yeah, there's probably going to be a live band. And I'm like, sweet. Do you think you could get me in touch with like the musical director or something so I can try to get into that? And they're like, yeah, we'll see what we can do. And so they talked to their director, who talked to the musical director, who reached out to me because I gave them my number to give to them. And so I had gotten a call, and she's like, hey, so I heard you were interested in playing bass. I actually don't have a bass player. So if you are interested, you can read music, then let's go ahead and we can meet up. I can give you the music. We can kind of talk about what's going on, and then you can play. And I'm like, oh, sweet. And so I went and did that. And then she'd also told me that she was looking for guitarists and stuff. So I shot Bret, and I'm like, hey, I shot.
Oh, God.
No, I'm like, he's not playing this show. No, but I shot Bret a text. I'm like, hey, there's an opening if you want to try playing in this pit orchestra. It's going to pay like $350. And so he's like, oh, hell yeah, I'm going to do that.
Well, in high school, that's a lot of money.
Yeah, high school, that was like, oh,
$350. That was
the coolest thing. That was our first like paid gig. Like
one of them.
Well, we did like wild card stuff, but that was the first one that was like a legit, like, we got paid for that.
Yeah.
It was more than like $20. But so then, beside the point. So we played that show, and then I hadn't done anything else really, like, musically at all, outside of like playing with a couple of friends, which a big tip is, like, if you're in high school or anything, like, playing with friends, just finding musical friends and just playing with them. Some of them are going to go on to do shows, and you might be able to play with them for those shows. And then one thing I also did was playing with my church at the time. On the worship team, I played bass for them, which was a great way to experience like how to play with other people in a live setting, how to actually perform, and how to kind of fit in with a band that's not all about you, kind of thing. Mm-hmm. So that was definitely an awesome learning experience for me. But so then go down a couple years, I hadn't really done anything outside of playing with some friends and some church stuff. And then the Pinnacle Theater, they were going to be doing their fundraiser show. They were doing Seussical, and so they reached out to the musical director from Legally Blonde and like, hey, we want you to come do this one. And she's like, okay. And she's like, well, I haven't done a show since Legally Blonde, so the only people that I know can play are those guys, so I'm going to reach out to them. I enjoyed playing with them, so I'm going to see if they're interested in doing this show too. So she emailed everybody, and I got the email. She's like, hey, it doesn't pay, but it's only one weekend, and it'd be a lot of fun. And I'm like, you know what, yeah, it'd probably be good. At that point I was like, I need to get back into the music industry. This is what I want to do. I need to start working on that more. And so I'm like, this could be a good opportunity to meet people and just to kind of get some exposure. And so I agreed to it, and we went and played it. And through that, the drummer for that band, his name is John. He was playing. He played in a bunch of local bands, and then he also he hosted a jam night at a bar in West Salem. And so he's like, hey, if you guys want to come down to that, I'm like, oh yeah, that'd be awesome, but I'm only 20. He's like, okay, well, message me when you're 21, and then I'll give you all the information so you can show up. I'm like, sweet. So I turned 21. I went to a couple of those jam nights, and through those jam nights, and just a big part of this too, like if you're going to be doing jam nights or open mics, you just kind of have to like just do it. Like it's nerve-wracking, especially when you're hearing the other guys and you're like, these guys are all so good, and it's like, just go up and don't be afraid to mess up, because especially in those bar settings, people are really forgiving, and it's pretty much, they're just there to have fun. So it's not like, it's fun to play. It's more fun when you're playing like right notes, quote unquote.
It's a great environment to dip your toes in the water.
Yeah.
And especially if you don't have a lot of live experience yet, you know, it gets your name out there. You never know what other locals could be at those jam nights. And
yeah. And through that, I actually, there was a lady who wanted to start a band, and she's like, hey, I want to start a cover band. She's like, do you want to play? And I'm like, yeah, you know what, I can. And at that point I realized, because I was like just going for the session music stuff, but I finally had realized, I'm like, if I'm not like playing with people, there's no way that I'm going to do this. Like, I can't just do this like sitting in my room making YouTube videos. It's like, if I want to actually make money and actually be a well-known player in my community, then I have to actually play with people. So I was like, yeah, I'll be in your band. And we got together and we played. I think we only were together for like a month, and it was just rehearsals. But yes, through there I met like 3 other drummers that were really cool, and then this guitar player named Chris, who is really into the scene. He's been playing in bands and running sound for people and everything for like, I want to say like 5 to 10 years or something.
Yeah.
So he's like really, really into the scene. He knows a lot of people. And so after that band had kind of just fallen apart, Chris reached out to me. He's like, hey, I know a couple bands who are looking for bass players. Are you interested? I'm like, yeah, just let them know. And so Tim from my band Highway 357, he actually reached out to me from a recommendation from Chris, and he's like, hey, Chris told me you're a really good player. Do you want to come audition for the band? We're looking for a bass player. And at that point too, the big part about like just kind of doing it, I mean, don't ever do anything, don't ever say anything or promote yourself that you could do something if you don't believe you could actually do it. Because it was like a Monday when he had called me, and he's like, yeah, and he's like, yeah, you want to audition? I'm like, yeah, cool. When are you guys rehearsing next? And he's like, oh, we're rehearsing tonight in like 2 hours. And I'm like, oh yeah, I could probably show up and I could probably figure it out. And he's like, are you sure? And I'm like, yeah, just send me the music. I'll listen to it and I'll come and just do my audition.
Did you mess up hard?
No, I actually did pretty well.
Because
I'm pretty good at like.
It sounded like you were setting that up to be like, don't do this. I did it and it was
totally
terrible.
Screwed up.
Yeah.
No, I mean, I didn't. It definitely wasn't like performance ready, but I definitely, part of playing with the doing the church music and stuff is like having not a lot of time to figure something out. And so with that amount of time, I was able to get a basic outline and idea of what the song was, so I could at least like kind of follow around and hold my own. So it's like, in like most bar situations, I would have done like, it wouldn't have been like, oh wow, he's the best player, but he'd be like, oh, he did pretty well. Kind of thing. And so they're like you learned, like we sent you these songs 2 hours ago, like, okay, dude, yeah, if you want to be in this band, like, sure.
Sick.
And so then that's how I got in there. And so, yeah, it's all about networking and talking to people, going to like music stores too, like any local music stores. There's always tons of musicians in there, like looking at new instruments or trying to promote themselves or whatever. So just going there, hanging out, meeting people, talking to the clerks and stuff, which most of the clerks are in bands. And there's so many places where you can find stuff, and even just going to shows, because like for Maroon 5, I was actually watching a video. James Valentine was talking about how he got into Maroon 5.
Yeah.
And he was just a guy like watching, like going to their shows at first.
And what instrument does he play?
Guitar.
Oh, okay.
He's a guitarist, and he was like, he was like, yeah, I don't know why, but I just had this feeling that I was gonna be in that band someday, and so he just like, he's like, I know what direction they're going, and I know I can help them get there. And so he was just a fan for like years, and then he finally got in, like did an audition or something, like talked to them enough that they like, hey, you want to come audition? And he ended up becoming the guitar player for Maroon 5. James Valentine, he now has like custom guitars and like or like a signature guitar and everything. And it's It's like
It's about who you know.
Yeah, it's all about who you know, and it's about just getting out there and talking to people.
Yeah, and so your whole experience kind of reflects a gigantic part of becoming a member of whether becoming established in your local area, becoming established, in a broader sense, in your genre, is just all about networking and who you know. Mm-hmm. And I guess for this podcast, we're going to focus on locally. Later on, we might get into the other aspects of it,
national
kind
of thing.
But for now, it's like you said, a huge part of being established locally. It's not all about just playing. Mm-hmm. Going, like you said, going to music stores, getting to know people, and then going to shows is a huge one.
Yeah.
You want the locals to be familiar with you. Mm-hmm. When I was trying to get Vita kind of big, I was taking a break from being in a band right before I joined Vita Occulta. And I was doing a solo acoustic thing. I did a little bit of an acoustic thing with my girlfriend, and we would play coffee shops, open mics and all that. And we made tons of friends. And it turns out that, a lot of those locals were in bands themselves. And I was like, hey man, you should listen to my, progressive rock
metal
instrumental band.
Yeah.
And they're like, oh yeah, okay, yeah. They didn't really believe that I was in like a metal band.
From playing
acoustic songs or whatever. And then they saw it and they really loved it. And it's just about making friends. You got to make friends by going to their shows and talking to them. And you can mention you're in a band for sure. I mean, that helps, but just be chill about it.
Yeah.
Just as long as you're not pushy, everything comes through organically. Just make friends at local bands, local promoters, local, just musicians in general, and just become established, be sociable.
Yeah.
And that's what it's all about in networking.
Yeah, definitely. Yeah. That's pretty much all there is to it. I mean, if you guys have any other questions, you can shoot us a DM on Instagram or leave us comments on YouTube or wherever you're listening to this. And just, you can ask questions and we'll definitely get to those and answer those the best we can. Yeah, I don't think we really have anything else to talk about now. And we're just about at time too.
Well, so. I'll say one last thing.
Yeah.
And a lot of it is about like your mindset.
Yeah.
So as a band, if you have a show and you just go there and you play, you get off, you load your stuff up and you leave. Mm-hmm. Your show might have been really memorable to people because it was really good. You could be an excellent band, but how they remember you and they remember your persona is like, and I've said this, I'm just like beating a dead horse here, but that matters just so much. And getting yourself out there to me was actually more nerve-wracking than playing in the band. Performing is something I was always pretty comfortable with, but then it was just talking to people and trying to not be pushy and trying to not to be like, hey, did you like my band? How was my band? Great. You should sign me up for more shows. But I will say, if you're friendly to people and you play well, they will come to you. Mm-hmm. And that's how it was for my last band. We would talk to people after shows and we made friends. A lot of them I'm still friends with now. I'll go to their shows and we'll talk and we'll hang out and it's great. And you'll find that it feels really great to just have that support. Mm-hmm. Even if you're not even talking about just for your band, but for yourself. Knowing that there are locals there who have been with you since the beginning, who care about where you're going as a musician, and they're rooting for you ever since the beginning. It's just a really great feeling. And being big in your local area is just so important. Before anything, that's the first challenge to get through.
Yeah, definitely. And then also, like, whenever people are complimenting you after a show, never deny a thank you. Just if people are saying, or never deny a compliment. So if they're like, hey, you did awesome, just be like, yeah, thank you so much. Because rejecting that is basically rejecting them as a fan.
Yeah, so, you want to be humble and you want to.
Yeah. So, okay. So with all that, thank you guys so much for listening to the Two Night Musicians podcast. You can follow us on Instagram, like our page on Facebook, and you can also see a video version of this podcast on YouTube. So go ahead and check all that stuff out, and we will talk to you guys next week.